For decades, NATO has been synonymous with American power. The US has provided the backbone of Europe's defense, from air power and logistics to nuclear deterrence. But now, something remarkable is happening. Europe's biggest military powers, including the UK, France, Germany, and the Nordics, are quietly working on a plan to take responsibility for the continent's defense, aiming for a structured transition over the next 5 to 10 years. The goal is to pitch the plan directly to President Trump, proposing a gradual handover of responsibilities. It's a response to mounting uncertainty about US commitments and the changing nature of its role in the global order. For the first time since NATO's founding, Europe is seriously preparing to defend itself without the US. The question is, can it actually pull this off? Europe has talked about strategic autonomy before, but this time it's different. The Financial Times reports that these discussions are no longer theoretical, following a meeting of the region's top defense officials in London on March 20th. There is a real push to create a roadmap for a military transition away from US dependence. The EU is aiming to mobilize 800 billion euros in new defense commitments, including a historic 150 billion euro loan scheme for weapons production. Under these plans, Europe is moving to buy and build more weapons domestically, shifting away from US defense contractors. And with France as Europe's only nuclear-armed EU member, discussions are beginning about how a European deterrent would function without the US nuclear umbrella. This change is not just about money, it's about political will. And that's where Donald Trump comes in. The Trump administration has largely forced this European pivot. Since at least the 1970s, US presidents have tried to push Europe to take on more defense responsibility, but it never happened. Nixon pulled US troops from South Korea to shore up the defense budget while urging Europe to increase its own spending. Reagan pressured allies to boost defense outlays, and even Obama warned that Europe needed to step up. But only Trump has truly jolted Europe into action. His ambiguous stance toward Russia and Ukraine, coupled with a degree of uncertainty over his commitment to NATO, have made European leaders realize they can't bet their survival on Washington. Today, the political reality is clear. The era of unconditional US security guarantees is ending. So if Europe is serious about replacing the US in NATO, what does it actually need? A recent analysis by Belgian think tank Bruegel estimated that to match current US contributions, Europe would need to add around 300,000 active troops, acquire 1,400 more tanks, 2,000 infantry fighting vehicles, and 700 additional artillery pieces. That's before even considering the enormous increase required in airlift, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities, refueling aircraft, and missile defense systems. And that's the sticking point. Europe's defense landscape is still fragmented. Dozens of national militaries with overlapping roles, redundant systems, and different procurement pathways. Unlike the US, which can deploy corps-sized formations under a single command, European forces sometimes struggle to operate jointly. That said, progress is happening. Poland is rapidly expanding its military, France is ramping up Rafale fighter production, and Germany has begun breaking long-held fiscal rules to push defense spending higher. And it should be noted, the region is home to world-class defense companies with cutting-edge technology that in some cases matches or exceeds US offerings. Yet, Europe still has glaring capability gaps. The 2011 Libya campaign is a case in point. European air forces took the lead, but the operation was only possible because of US support, especially in ISR, air refueling, and precision targeting. That dependency hasn't gone away. Today, the EU is still reliant on US satellite data and geospatial intelligence. In response, the European Commission is now exploring a new satellite network to strengthen military surveillance and reduce reliance on American systems. The initiative would provide more frequent tracking of military movements, helping to close critical information gaps that undermine Europe's autonomy. In the end, this transition isn't just about military policy, it's about the future of Europe itself. European governments have long been able to fund expansive welfare programs because the US handled their security, and that equation is changing. A true European military capable of replacing the US will require sustained spending of at least 3.5% of GDP on defense. That's more than double what most European nations currently allocate. And the reality is, something has to give. Either European leaders gut their welfare states or they pile on debt. Either way, this will redefine the economic and social structure of Europe. At the same time, for the US, this shift solves a major strategic problem. Many in Washington, including figures like Elbridge Colby, have long argued that the US must prioritize China over Europe. These figures argue that Russia is a threat, but China is the only true peer competitor capable of challenging US global dominance. Every dollar and brigade committed to Europe is one not available for the Indo-Pacific. If Europe can take charge of its own defense, the US can fully pivot to countering China. This is a seismic shift. In this world, the US gets to consolidate its resources, Europe finally becomes a genuine military power, and NATO transforms into something unrecognizable from the Cold War alliance it once was. For the first time in modern history, Europe is seriously preparing for life without the US security umbrella. Will it succeed? That depends. If these plans hold, NATO could become a European-led force within a decade. But if old habits return and spending commitments collapse, this could turn into yet another false start. But one thing is certain. The era of US-dependent European defense is coming to an end. And by the 2030s, the world will look very different because of it.